5, so we'll make a start. Welcome to all of you who have come in for this face-to-face version of the lecture, but also welcome to those of you who are following us live stream on YouTube, or indeed listening to this later on lecture capture. As Nicola, who's going to be speaking later, will explain, because the courses are quite large this year, we're going to try and do evening lectures as much as possible with a face-to-face version, but also the material will be available through lecture capture afterwards. So even if you're here, you can re-listen to that again, because we speak with very strong Scottish accents, and I speak very quickly. And people keep telling me to slow down, and I never learn. So if you want to know what I said, listen back in a day or so. Okay, so generic research methods. These, this evening's lecture is an introduction not just to sources of knowledge, Research Methods 1, but also to the second Research Methods course, which is taken in semester 2, and that gets called either Conceptualising Research or Research Methods 2, and also the Dissertation Support strand, which is something new that we're offering to students this year. It is not a course as such. Nicola will explain about that later. But it's been designed to give you some additional support as you work towards your dissertations, which those of you on master's programmes will be doing, although those of you enrolled on certificate or diploma programmes will not. So, the first thing to do is to meet the team. My name is Gail MacLeod. I live in Simon Laurie House in room 2.14. If you're going through the archway, through to the Royal Mile, there's a little building hiding up on the left-hand side, Simon Laurie House. If you ring buzzer 5, then I may let you in, depending on my office or not. I'm responsible for Research Methods 1. I have an overall responsibility for Research Methods 1, 2, and the Dissertation Support. Just in case you're interested, my own research tends to be qualitative and tends to focus on the experiences either of pupils in thrown out of school because they're badly behaved. More recently, I've been doing research with students in higher education, so I'm interested in the student experience broadly. Malcolm, we'll talk to you in a few minutes. Malcolm is in charge of conceptualising research, who I think a lot of you from the TESOL programme will know is in charge of our dissertation support strand. Alice with us as well, who is going to be taking 2 of the workshops on a Friday, so Alice is one of the workshop tutors. Malcolm's also taking a workshop, and I'm taking a few workshops as well. Susan Scott is responsible, is the admin person responsible for all 3 of these courses, although dissertation support strand isn't a course. So if you've got problems with administrative issues relating to the research methods, then Susan is the person to contact. Susan's official email is researchmethods@ed.act.up, and she does reply if you email her on that, but actually just susan.scott@ed.ac.uk will get to her as well. And Susan shares an office with the other PGT programme administrative staff in the graduate school. Some of you may might be to see if you're on inclusive education, I think the website for that, or education. So that big office, there's lots of administrators. Susan, tutor team. See this? This is the old version of the lecture. So it's a mistake because this is accessed and the version of the presentation. Last one, Sue, Madeline, Heidi, Yuchen, and Malcolm. We also have Courtney and Fiona and Labaki. I think that's it. Taking workshops. Most of those tutors are taking 2 workshops. I think Malcolm and Andrew are taking 1 each, and I'm taking 3 because I love this course so much. Okay, so what are we doing tonight? So tonight there will be an introduction to the courses, both RM1 and RM2, and to the dissertation support strand. We're going to talk about the set texts. You'll see that Blackwell's have very kindly come in with a stand at the back there, giving us a wave with the 3 core books. I'm going to talk about them in a minute. And then there should be time for questions at the end. I have a football match to get to. The kick-off is at 7:45 and it's on the other side of town. So I may disappear and Malcolm and Nicola might answer your questions, okay? But there's a very important game on at Tynecastle tonight. Okay, so what do you need to know? At this stage you need to know, I don't know if you do need to know this actually, but I think it's interesting for you to know the source of knowledge and conceptualizing research are 10 credit courses. Okay, basically, they're half the credit load of your other courses, most of your other courses. Education for core courses, 20 credits. There are leveling, which means level of difficulty. Okay, so they're postgraduate level courses, but they're only worth half the credits. And you should think about that when you're thinking about how much time you should be spending on working on these courses. You should be spending about half as much time on the courses for, on the reading and the assessment, everything for sources of knowledge and conceptualizing research, as you do for your core courses. But the important thing to remember is that these courses run over 5 weeks, okay? So we don't want you to spend half your time for those 5 weeks looking at it, because actually you want to be spending, when the course is on, you want to be spending as much time on the course as you are for your other courses, because those other courses run for 10 weeks. Okay? So the half credit is already built into the fact that there's only 5 weeks of teaching. So each week that you have a source of knowledge or research class, you should be doing as much work into that as you are for your other course that week. Have I just confused you all? Is that okay? Do you understand that? Yeah? So when you've got a class that week, work hard on it, much time on it, and for your other 20 credit courses. These are compulsory on almost all the PGT programs. Inclusive education, dance science education, sport policy, management, international development, TESOL, language teaching, outdoor education, outdoor environment and sustainability education, learning for sustainability. I've forgotten any. I always forget one, and I get people get really annoyed. You totally forgot my course, my course. Oh, MSc education and all pathways apart from the research pathway. Some programs, school postgraduate programs, schools don't take these courses, and that is largely because they are drawing more on much more quantitative methodology as the default position. So things like biomechanics of sport, that kind of thing. They have their own research methods courses because they have a particular approach to research. Although I keep trying to get them to join us. They're resisting so far. Okay, so they are compulsory. So it's not the kind of course you normally take as an option course. Some programs do not take conceptualizing research. For example, outdoor education and sustainability. Outdoor environmental and sustainability education don't take RM2. It's a very large cohort then, because we've got students from all these programs. Euclid at the moment is telling me there are 619 registered. Now, Euclid is live, so there are not that many of you. Quite a lot of you, hence the live streaming and things. But because that's a large cohort, we want to get to know you and talking about ideas, the research and things, we divide up to a small workshop. So most of the activity happens on the course, happens through your material, then activities you do, workshop tutor. There are core materials which are delivered online. These are generally me talking, a picture talking, or slides and my voice talking, or although later on the term we get people in who know what they're talking about to talk about some other things. So there's always got some online material for you to look at. There's even a video of Donald Trump at some point, which is one of my very favourites. So yeah, I think that's week 5. So there's video material to look at. There's also core reading materials, and the same regardless of what workshop you're in. So you should be watching the same videos, reading the same core readings every. On the reading books handbook, sometimes I made a note of where there are extended readings. So if you've done social science research before, and you're quite good at it, we've tried to you might want to go and read. If you have not done research before, okay, the extended for people already in the subject, you can pass the course in those extended on a basis. So very confident with the course. We call that some of the lines, some of the delivery. There is one entirely online and a number of students on different programs taking the programs part time the week from come in for Facebook. So there is an online. knowledge and contextualizing research. Not Department of Social Security. There's no attachment. There's no formal assessment for that. If you do not want the clue is we've got a lot of effort into designing and doing lectures that we and some previous this evening. Here, so else have got to stand at the end of the room. There are 3 courses which we strongly advise you to buy, and buy the most recent copies. You will see there that Blackwell's are offering a £20 reduction on the total price for all 3 books, just for students who are enrolled on this programme. Okay, because we promised them that lots of people would buy them, and they said, well, if lots of people are going to buy them, then we can reduce the price. So that's why there's, I know £56 sounds like a lot of money. Things to be aware of is that all 3 of them are useful for you throughout your programme of study, regardless of what programme of study you're doing. So, for example, the first one, Critical Reading and Writing for Postgraduates, the Wallace and Ray book, that's the kind of mainly green and white one, is something which some programs actually send to students as pre-arrival reading and saying, this is to help you think about postgraduate, think about how you should be engaging with materials. People keep going back to that as they go through the year. Thomas's book is clear how to do research design, what counts as research, different sorts of research design, different methods. It's really useful when you come to particular reading from knowledge. And one to research method education is the one that will be drawing on most heavily in conceptualizing research. There's a couple of in it I refer to as again, really useful to do your dissertation. Dissertation probably one thing to remember is your program of study. If you're doing masters, your dissertation is worth 20 credits. So there's 20 credit courses, and we really encourage you to think about this semester, not waiting until next semester. Our experience about do much better in the final session. Also, much more likely to be able to do the research you want to do. Because there's a lot of planning and lots of reading, and lots of thinking about strategy. Leave it until Christmas. Start thinking about what you're going to study. You end often having some things that actually aren't ideal or that you wouldn't really want to do. You start thinking about it, then you can start. It's more likely the project you really want to do. All of the time you will get absolutely your dissertation. Okay, you will want it to be it really helps your dissertation. Okay, you end up doing a dissertation you're super interested in because you've let it, that's not very motivating. So, all of these will be useful for your dissertation. All of them will be useful for the core research methods courses. That's not going to work. Strongly recommend that we buy them. Do try and get the most recent editions as well, because Gary Thomas does make quite a lot of different editions. The page numbers are different, the chapter numbers are different. I think Blackwell and the Store and South rates do some second copies from previous years. The other thing is all these books, not just the level that you're reading around those core readings, this is the start. About your assignment. Knowledge about now. There's a folder each week. Have all of you found? I found the folder 4 courses of knowledge. Excellent. Thank you. that says, well, this lecture will go in here, I'll link this lecture on like capture go there, course handbooks, information about the course, but then there's week by week folders that contain all the information you need to know for that week. There's information in the week by week folders. It's exactly the same information as in the course handbook. Okay, I literally just cut and pasted from the course handbook, so you don't have to look at both. But for week one, look at week one folder, look at the reading and looking at the activities and look at what you have to prepare. The workshops are designed to be activity-based. These are not seminars. So for the most part in these workshops, we will not be discussing the readings. That's not the purpose of these workshops. We strongly advise that if you want to discuss the readings, if you find that useful, and most students do, then you hook up with a couple of other people from your programme and you form your own independent reading group. Your personal tutor will be able to help you book a room in the library if you want to do that, or just hang out in levels, hang out in a cheaper coffee shop somewhere and discuss the readings. So the primary purpose of these workshops is not to sit and discuss the readings in greater depth. As master's level students, we expect you to be engaging with that. There are activities to help you begin to use the materials and reflect on the reading, to begin to think about how you then use that when you start evaluating research. So there'll be activities in the workshops and there will be discussions in the workshops. And of course, yes, there'll be a chance to say, I really don't understand. Okay? So there'll be some help there. Your tutors will try and be helpful, but that's not the main purpose of the workshops. Okay? Master's level, if you don't understand, the first thing you do is you go back to the reading, you read it again, or you go to a glossary, or you go to an encyclopedia or something. There's some useful links in the course handbook of places to go. You talk to a friend, and then when you're really stuck, you can talk to your tutor. So if a student comes to me and says, Gail, I don't know what positivism is, I will say, what have you read? And what is it about what you've read about positivism that is confusing you? Okay? I'm not here to tell you the answers, although I will hopefully help you find those answers for yourself. So, as you're getting the impression, hopefully there's lots of independent study, both from the core texts. As you're going along, read the core text. When it comes to do your assignment, you'll want to read beyond the core text. If you look at the assessment criteria, in order to get above a C in knowledge use of the literature, you need to be engaging with materials beyond the reading list. That means materials that you are finding yourself which are relevant to the topic that you're studying. And finally, the course information is in the handbook, and therefore if you ask me a question and I know the answer to it is in the handbook, my response will be, it's in the handbook. Okay. Sources of knowledge again. This is not a research methods course. This is not a course to teach you how to do research. You will not learn how to design questionnaires, and you will not learn how to do interviews, and you will not learn how to do analysis of interviews or set up quasi-experimental designs or do an ethnography or any of that. Okay? So please do not say in your evaluation at the end of the course, I learned nothing about how to do research. You're not meant to. Okay? That's what LIT is for. Alright? That's what the dissertation support strand is for. Sources of knowledge is about how to evaluate research. How are you going to make sense of research? So it applies to all the reading that you're doing across your programme. When you're reading a research article, how can you make sense of it? How can you make a judgment about the claims that that article is trying to make? Can we be confident in the knowledge that the article is claiming to generate? Or are there some issues with it? So it's about developing as a critical reader and evaluator of research. So your learning on this course should be transferable to your other courses and to your dissertation. So I supervised 13 master's dissertations last summer. Everybody passed. Well done. And quite often in supervisions, I would be saying, do you remember on sources of knowledge when we talked about this? Right? So we will be returning to the kinds of information that you're, and the things, knowledge and understanding that you're being introduced to on sources of knowledge throughout your programme. It is not a standalone course, and you will get most from it if you see it as something which is there to help you with all your other courses and with your dissertation. Why do we make you do it? I'm aware that I'm going over my time, so I'm going to speak really quickly here. As master's students, you are expected to critically engage with the literature. If you don't critically engage, you can't get more than 50%. Well, on the knowledge and understanding of the literature criteria, okay? Or, sorry, no, the critical engagement theory. So you have to show critical engagement. You have to show that you are making a judgment about the stuff that you're reading and coming to your own informed opinion about it. Okay, so it's about evaluating the confidence we can have in the claims that literature makes. In order to do that, you have to understand that the research carried out in different traditions has different quality criteria that we would apply to it. So, has anybody heard of a research approach called autoethnography? Anybody? Hand up. Yes! How many people would you study in an autoethnography? Thank you. Excellent. So, you also have heard of longitudinal survey data, where we do kind of large-scale, things like Growing Up in Scotland data. Those of you in the Inclusive Education Programme have heard of that. Large-scale data sets, where actually for it to be of any value, we want about 500-600 people, and we want them to be representative in a fairly kind of nuanced way. So you can't say that there's a set number of people that you need to have in your research for it to be good research. So you couldn't critique an autoethnography and say this is a bad piece of research because it only involves one person. But if your large-scale data set only had one respondent filling in your questionnaire, that would be a problem. And throughout research, depending on the kind of research that you're doing, there are different criteria that we would apply to say whether or not that research is valid, is it trustworthy, is it credible, can we have confidence in it, is it transferable to other settings? And that's the kinds of thing that you'll be learning on this course. And the reason we have you all together is because it's really nice to mix and meet people from outside your programme. It's nice for tutors who don't normally teach on TESOL, for example, like myself, to meet people from the TESOL programme or the MSc Education programme or sports or dance. That's one of the nicest things about the course. But also these issues are fundamental to social science research. That these issues apply regardless of which programme or which field of study you're looking at. So it's the same issue, so it makes sense for it all to be taught together. Very briefly on assessment and feedback. We understand feedback as a conversation, not a one-off event. Feedback is not something that we do to you once you've handed in your written work. So feedback involves the kind of conversations we'll be having with you in the workshops as we try and help you reach a deeper understanding of the stuff that you're looking at. Feedback should help you become more independent. The ultimate goal of feedback is to reach the point where you're able to look at your next essay and go, oh yeah, I need to deepen this, or I need a different reference here, or I haven't supported this enough here, or that's not entirely clear, or maybe that paragraph should go first. So it's to help you become an independent learner. There will be formative feedback mid-course in Sources of Knowledge where you're asked to do some writing, which will be similar to the final assessment task and will give you a bit of feedback on the feed forward on that. Final assessment is due on the 23rd of November, and it will be assessed according to the Common Marking Scale, which is exactly the same marking scale as all your other work will be assessed according to. What we do slightly differently on this course is you get marks out of 20 for each of the 5 assessment criteria. There will be a lecture on November the 14th in this hall at this time going over the assessment task and explaining the assessment criteria in more detail. And in due course there will be exemplar essays from previous years available for your information. That's the first time we've been able to do that. The assignment task is to do a critical review of an article. And that seems to be the end of this version of the slideshow. So, I'm going to see if I can find the other version. So Malcolm, start talking. Yeah, it's defaulted to the old one. Yeah, I've got it on my pen drive here. While we're dealing with a minor technical problem caused by my error, is there any questions about sources of knowledge? You have a mic there. No? Okay, do you want to take over there?
Right, let's see what I can do.
Nothing? No questions? All clear? Any questions? Okay. So you've got your lecture stuff on there then. You may want to use the short break to go and purchase a pack of books from the Blackwell counter at the back of the room.
The whole thing here. But do you have it?
I think so, yes.
Is mine there?
Yes.
Hello, yes.
Can you see it too?
I think so. Now, how does a mic work? What do you...
That there. I'm gonna... Yeah, speak into the black bit at the top. Okay?
Can I just shout?
Yeah, go on.
When is the DSS going to be available? Is that during this term or is it next semester? When is that?
Yeah, it starts this term. Nicola's going to talk about that later this evening. It starts on October 10th, is the first lecture.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Mark Orban and for research 2. I'll try and give you your account of joys that this course, so that when you back after this semester, at least you'll think, well, I've keep going. Some of the things Gail reading are to conceptualize research as well. It utilizes the blended learning approach that Gail was talking about. The course, in terms of accessing the course, by the time next semester begins, the course will be available on Learn. And by that time, you'll be thoroughly familiar with that online way of accessing the course and the materials, etc. And we have the same intentions as well about running activity-based workshops, with this idea that the readings will have been, and the watching of online videos will have been completed before you arrive at the course, to then work on different activities and, crucially, to discuss research-related ideas with your colleagues in your workshop groups. So if we look at what this course is trying to help you with, it's trying to help you analyse research foundations within the social sciences. And two key words, possibly some of the rare occasions when you will need to engage with a language which might be currently a little less familiar, is we will be looking after research methods. One, when we review research articles, what are the ontological position that the authors are taking, and what is their epistemological perspective? So what do they consider to be the nature of existence, the nature of being? What do they consider to be the nature of knowledge? So these will be important matters conceptually that we'll try to review each week. And linked to that, once we've got an outline of how theoretically different authors are reviewing the papers that we're looking at, we'll then link that to some of the methodological and methods assumptions which the readers, which the researchers are making. So we try to get an awareness and an appreciation of the links between theory in research and practice, and the idea that there are viable connections and there are points of coherence between the two, and that your research in the future would benefit from a grasp of that key point. So we will be looking at the relationships between research, theory and practice, and crucially, because we're looking at research in the social sciences, we will be considering in all the papers that we look at some of the ethical challenges, some of the ethical ramifications about, is it reasonable to involve students if students are involved in this level of research, or is it reasonable that we can observe certain groups at work, or that we can ask teachers about aspects of their professionalism. So in terms of having a central thread, what we're looking to try and tease out throughout the course is the links between the theoretical perspectives involved in research, and to link that with methodologies, which looks at the approach which researchers then take to investigate the research questions which they've framed, and then look at the methods that they've chosen. So are, for example, the methods that they've chosen to complete an interpretive study, do those methods make sense when you're trying to interpret something? By contrast, we might look at a different approach to research where somebody is trying to test a hypothesis. And then we would look at, well, are the methods that they've adopted consistent with trying to test a hypothesis? Okay? Now, in trying to describe the course to you, I've tried to come up with a diagram that paints 1,000 words. Now, it may be that you wish to take the route to success which is on your left-hand side here. Okay? The sooner the better, A to B, as soon as possible. Now, for most of us, most of the time, we will be successful at this course, but we are going to be taking the road which is on the right-hand side. Okay? Because research in the social sciences and in education is inevitably complex, because different research approaches are contested between people who think some approaches to research are more viable and plausible than others. Okay? And what we're trying to do throughout this course is to try and unravel some of these complexities for you. And we're trying to do that would help you by the time you move to your dissertation studies to feel confident that the research design that you've adopted is one which you can plausibly defend. Because you will have studied conceptually research design, and there will always be contrasting views about how research can be conducted, but you'll feel sufficiently confident, we hope, that you can defend robustly the approach that you've adopted. Okay? So we'll be in this slightly knotted route to success, but hopefully doing a degree of unravelling during the weeks, which will get us there in the end. So we're going to deliberately spend time there, because when we study in education matters such as teachers' beliefs, when we study things like students' levels of learning, whether students have reached certain outcomes, how quickly they might have achieved these outcomes, what other factors might have influenced whether they achieve these outcomes or not, these are inevitably complex matters because they involve people. Right? So this is a complicated matter. So we have to get used to dwelling on these points and not hoping that there's just an immediate quick route through this, because it tends not to be. Okay? So in terms of, this course is run on a workshop basis over 5 weeks of workshops, just like RM1, and this is broadly what we cover during these 5 weeks. In the first session, we will be looking at research predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly from a quantitative perspective. Okay? Now this is largely an area of research which tends predominantly to involve large data sets, to test hypotheses, to have a research design which might involve some degree of statistical analysis or something similar. Okay? So we'll be looking at that in week 1, and we'll be looking much more in week 2 at qualitative research design, okay? Which is often used when research is trying to understand something better. So it's often trying to interpret an area of education, and trying to get inside some of these issues. Okay? And in week 3, we'll be looking at a mixed methods design which has aspects of both quantitative and qualitative. Because a key point during these three works is while we're looking at these three areas predominantly, they are not exclusive. Because very often research has aspects of different conceptual perspectives. We're looking at the reasons why the authors of these research have chosen the perspective that they have. And as we talked about before, whether it's then consistent with the methodologies that they've adopted and the methods that they've used for analysis. In week 4, that's going to begin with a formative feedback exercise, and that exercise will involve small groups in each workshop making short 6-minute presentations about their analysis of a paper, and it will be the same paper for all groups. Okay? And the tutor will give some feedback on that at the time, but they will also give some written comments will be returned to the groups in week 5 as well. Okay? Week 4 will also spend some time looking at forms of analysis. Whether it's deductive, in that the approach to analysis is trying to build theory by deducing whether a hypothesis is true or not, or whether it's inductive, in that the theory is really trying to be assembled from analysing the data. So it's the data which is being used to try to infer and make theory from there. Okay? In week 5 as well, we also have a number of ethical issues and ethical scenarios which we ask you to discuss and review to try and help sharpen your focus at this stage about the importance that we attach to the research that you're going on to do in the future, to make sure that in terms of ethics you've anticipated what some of these challenges might be. Okay? In terms of preparing for each session, it's vital that you prepare ahead of the sessions. You will get a tick for attending if you haven't read the readings or watched the videos, but your contribution will be a very modest one and not really what we had in mind at all. So for each session, you are required to review a set video lecture, which will be available online, and we also have a follow-up extended lecture. And we have that for our video lectures and for our readings. So you need to at least review the set lecture and complete a reading of the set article, and there's other follow-up materials that you can also look at. We meet in our discussion groups, approximately 25 students each of the first 5 weeks, and as I mentioned just there, your degree of preparation is vital for the success of the workshops. You will get tutor support each week. In terms of further formative feedback to you, there will be, in week 3, there will be posted online 20 research questions, multiple choice questions, for you to either complete individually or in groups, and a few days later we'll be posting the answers to the questions, and you can take that as a self-check formative feedback exercise for you to work out to what extent, when we've asked you these very short, sharp questions related to research design and methods of research, whether you've got a clear understanding of those. And for those questions which you perhaps don't get wrong, we've given you some advice in the answers about the text references you might wish to go to try and check your understanding. We will also give you formative feedback, as I mentioned, on your group presentation that you complete in week 4. And also, what we're going to do for 2 articles is we will post exemplar answers from previous years, and we will attach to those the comments and the marks which those scripts received, and we will post some exemplars which achieved a band A3, which is between 70 and 80, and those which achieved a C between 50 and 60. And there'll be an assessment session, a 1-hour review session, which you're welcome to at the end of the course as well. Now, in terms of completing the assignment, what you do is you select one of these papers. Now, call me old-fashioned, but I thought I wouldn't put the papers up there at this time, in case you suddenly felt an urge to start answering the course question before we've begun. So I've just left that blank at the moment, okay? But just to let you know the free spirit that we are in Edinburgh, last year we had 2 questions, and this year we have 3. So that's quite something, isn't it? Okay? So that's what we've done. You will choose one of 3 questions, and you will base your answer on that question, okay? And for everybody, this is the task that you'll be asked to do, okay? So everybody completes the same task for the single paper you've decided to do. And the task is identify and explain. Identify, explain the theoretical perspectives which underpin the researcher's choice of methodology, okay? And we suggest that within your 2,000 words, you apportion about a quarter of the word allocation to that part of the answer. Okay? The main part of the answer, the most vital, which we suggest you spend about half your time working on, is critique. Now, critique is more than identify and explaining. Critique the effectiveness of the relationship between the theoretical perspective, the methodology chosen, and the methods used for collecting and analysing data. Okay? And then lastly, you would discuss the ethical issues associated with your paper. Okay? And the key point here, which I'll mention much later, is of course in some of the research papers that you read, the ethical issues might be clearly addressed within the paper, but it may be that some ethical issues are not there. So part of your identifying and discussing might be talking about the absences of mentioning of ethics, etc. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Nicola. I'm the course organiser for the Dissertation Support Strand. I've been actively involved in research training for the last 7 years here at Murray House. I've been a tutor on all of the research courses, Research Methods 1, 2. I run courses for the PhD students on how to publish from your thesis, doing research at PhD level, such as Dissertation Training Day in the past, speakers, meeting PhD student events. So Andrew and Baz here actually gave us their master's experience, so their experience of doing a master's dissertation. I am quite excited to be organising this new course because I think it is important, as Gail said, to start thinking about your dissertation now-ish, definitely soon. I gave a lecture this morning to my own students and we were already talking about dissertation ideas. I suggested having a little logbook and to start thinking, when something interesting comes up in a lecture. So this course, as Gail mentioned, is optional. You don't have to come, but it's highly recommended and it's designed to help you. The dissertation might seem like it's very, very, very far away, but again, as Gail mentioned, if you start thinking about it now, you start thinking about what you're interested in, then the whole dissertation writing process will be much, much easier and much more straightforward. So there's no credits attached, and it's going to be a series of evening lectures on Wednesday. The timetable is up there very quickly. We'll also have a poster conference and a research proposal as well. Now this is part of the dissertation. The research proposal is required, but you don't submit that to your dissertation supervisor. The timeline might differ according to students in different programmes. This is something that you discuss with your supervisor. But it's a really nice idea because it means when you meet your dissertation supervisor for the first time, you've got quite a good idea of what it is that you want to investigate, rather than just turning up, maybe with one or two ideas. There's a folder on Learn, and I'll start populating that with resources for each of the different topics. The lectures will be captured on video, so you can watch them back again. And as I mentioned, the course aims to help you with your dissertation. So why do we have this optional course then? Well, you have to write a dissertation. Yeah? Your master's ends with this a research project, your dissertation. But we do want you to start thinking about this early. We also want you to provide you with support at different stages. What we used to do in the past was provide some support from March. Was it March, I think, planning research started? And a lot of students felt that this was quite late. I also felt that there wasn't really as much support provided, so we ran some extra sessions and training sessions as well. I think it'll also help you get used to the poster format of presenting research, presenting your ideas, and as I mentioned, the research proposal will help you when you meet your supervisor for the first time. It's not assessed. We will give you feed forwards, so at the poster event, which is the 1st of May, I think these are the old slides, I think I put date to be decided up there. We'll have a big poster conference with lots of boards, and you can put up your research proposal in a poster format. We'll invite lots of members of staff from around Murray House, and they'll come and give you feedback on this. So I would strongly recommend you to come to get some feedback. But also just an opportunity to talk about your research ideas.
Biscuits.
Oh, there's biscuits, apparently. This forward will help you research which the link to your supervisor, and hopefully it's to help with your semester 1, we've got 4 evening lectures, so we start on 20th, and it's going to be research. What is a research project at master's level? What is a master's dissertation? I strongly encourage you to come along with that. What kind of thing can I study? And then on the 24th of October, a lecture on identifying a topic. So this is currently what I'm doing with undergraduate students just now. I'm a tutor on the undergraduate dissertation course. And just this week we were talking about what is an interesting topic, what's a title, what's a topic, and thinking about how to start investigating your topic. Gail will then give a lecture on the 21st of November on developing your research questions. So what is a research question, what's the aim and the rationale? And then on the 28th we're going to invite some PhD students who will talk about their experience writing a master's. I've always found this in the past to be a really useful experience because the PhD students are in the middle, of you and your tutors. And a lot of them are fresh out their masters as well. So it's a nice opportunity to have a bit of a question and answer session with the PhD students. They can give you some tips for time management as well. In semester 2, we move more on to, these are the old slides, aren't they? 4 or 5, this should be. And we move on to methodology and design. So thinking about desk-based research, quantitative, qualitative, so drawing on the literature that you'll be introduced to in research methods too. And then on the 1st of May, I'll give a lecture on practical issues. I've just published a chapter actually in a book on real-world research, and it was about encountering problems when you do research and how to overcome these problems. And I think it's quite useful to think about the problems that you might encounter, the limitations of your study, things like that. So I hope that these topics will be of interest to you. We will also organise a mini conference. This will be over the course of about 4 days, and there will be a number of different sessions offered by tutors from around Murray House. So on things like general topics, doing research with children, or doing ethnography, doing desk-based research. And you can sign up to these workshops and attend lots of different ones. And it'll be a nice opportunity to meet tutors from around the school as well. We're trying to organise that at the moment. So that's the 23rd to the 27th of April. Poster conference, the date has been decided. It's the 1st of May. And as I mentioned, this is when you will have an opportunity to come along, put your poster up and get feedback from staff, PhD students, anyone else that's invited to come along. This is a structure of your proposal. I'll not go over that just now. As I mentioned, it's not assessed, but you do have to write one and then you submit that to your supervisor. It's part of your dissertation. That's all. Thank you. Managed it in 10 minutes. Shall we take questions? Will you put your football match? What time? Priorities.
Okay, thanks very much, Nicola and Malcolm. I should also say that Labaki and Andrew have joined us. So Labaki and Andrew are going to be tutoring on the course as well. I think Labaki, you've got 2 workshops on a Friday, haven't you? And Andrew's going to do one of the Tuesday night ones along with me. Well, not that we're doing the same workshop, I'm also doing a Tuesday night one. Okay, any questions about any of that, either about sources of knowledge or conceptualising research or the dissertation support strand?
A lot of information to
Yeah. So you can watch this back if you're so inclined on the YouTube link. It's also been live captured, which is why this red light is on. So you'll get the audio and the slides, and we'll post that onto the Sources of Knowledge Learn page. And we'll also put PowerPoints up there as well. If there's any questions just now that we can help you with. Classes start next week. First classes will be Tuesday, on Friday. Oh, yeah. Do you know which workshop you're in? Is that? Okay, so the students on the outdoor education or the outdoor environmental sustainability education programs, all students on those programs are together in the same workshop with Heidi Smith as your tutor. And those workshops will be meeting at times which are similar to the rest of the workshops, but they've been designed to take account of your trip to the Cairngorms, I think, and I think it's another field trip as well. So we talked to Simon and Beth and people in the outdoor ed team before we scheduled those. So everybody who's on the OE or the OESE program in that workshop, and that information should be showing on your Learn page, although I earlier the timetabling unit are having some difficulties in getting that particular workshop to show up on Learn. But if that's the program you're in, you're definitely with Heidi, and it's definitely a time that means you can still go climbing. Yep.
How about the rest of us? Should that be in Learn as well?
Okay, so for the rest of you, yes, you should be able to find your workshop on Learn. Now, the reason I sound vague when I answer this question is because Learn does not allow tutors to see what the students see. Okay? So we can go in and we can do student view, which is a general student view, but we can't go in, there's not like a dummy student ID that we can go in to see how that shows up, which workshop you've been allocated to. My understanding from some very helpful students who screenshot things and sent it to me is that what shows up depends quite a lot on how you're accessing the Learn page. You're doing that from an Android device or on a Mac, or you're using Chrome or Safari. Generally speaking, Learn page, somewhere in the top left, there's something, when you click on it, it will reveal your workshop. And and sometimes it's a tiny little grey arrow. Now, if you have neither of those, or if when you click on one of those nothing shows up, then can you email Susan Scott, susan.scott@ed.ac.uk, and check that you have, and she will check that you have actually been allocated to a workshop. Now, I should say that just today we have been shifting some workshop allocations around, and that's because we were getting multiple requests from students who did not want to be in a Tuesday evening workshop because they're concerned about dark nights and things like that. We have now, I'm very pleased to say, managed to shift 2 of those evening workshops to Friday afternoons. They'll be at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoons. Alice is taking one of them, and Madeline is taking one. So Alice and Madeline very kindly agreed to shift their commitments to work Friday afternoon. There are 2. Andrew will be taking one and I'll be taking one. But as a result, you may have your workshop change from what it originally showed up earlier in this week, but that has been in response to requests from students to try and shift things around. So we do try and respond as much as we can. Okay, but if somebody finds the workshop's changed, that's probably why. We cannot manually change workshop groups. You have to put a request into the timetable and unit. It is a central university service. Susan can't access it herself, and I can't access it. So we're not being difficult when we say, if you need to request a change to your workshop group, please go to the timetable and unit online page, information on the there's an online form you have to fill in. Then emailed me and said, oh yes, go up. If you put in the course code, which is on the first page, that makes it show up. RED 1 that's on the front page of the course handbook, and that is the 5 of the course. Sorry, it's complicated. It's complicated for us as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first question is, do you have to register directly for the lectures on the dissertation support strand? No, you don't. Just turn up. They will all be in here. They are all on Wednesday nights. And yeah, please come, because otherwise I'll be speaking to myself and Nicola will be speaking to herself. So yeah, you're all welcome. This room can take 240 people, so no need to register, and there will be no attendance record kept. It really is about helping you begin to see your dissertation as a different part of your master's. It's where you become an independent learner, therefore you can independently make a decision about whether or not this is something you want to do. Okay, it's not like high school or undergraduate. You decide what's useful for you, but on the basis of our experience in previous years, we highly recommend that you attend. And you had another question?
Yeah, there are 3 books that you are recommended in the slides, and I have one of them, but it's not the latest edition. Is that necessary?
Which book is it that you don't have the latest edition of? Is it green and white? Green. Yeah, okay, so I think that's probably the Wallace and Ray. It's not ideal, but if you've gone out and bought that, or you've already got, I wouldn't say go and buy a new one, but if you haven't yet bought your books, try and get the most recent edition. Okay? But you may have to do a wee bit of work because the page numbers might not match up exactly. You may have slightly different content to other people, but you need to find somebody else in your course who's got the most recent edition and just check and see if the recommended chapters are the same chapter numbers. Okay? Anything else? Okay, I'm not missing any hands now. No? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all again on the 10th of October and sometime next week in the workshops. Thanks.